So one of the things that you outlined was listening as well. And you worked at organizations that did great at this and built a culture around listening.
Yes.
How do you build that culture in organizations?
You know, I think it's important to be aware of your own style of listening. In Radical Candor, the book, I talk about there's loud listeners and there's quiet listeners. Tim Cook, for example, at Apple was a quiet listener. He would really just remain silent and let you talk. Steve Jobs, on the other hand, was a loud listener, right? And the way that he listened was he would say something very strongly and he would demand that you respond just as strongly. So there was a case of a colleague of mine at Apple who disagreed with Steve about something. And he eventually just sort of backed down. He's like, well, you're the boss, we'll do it your way. And it emerged that my colleague was right and Steve was wrong on this particular issue. And Steve came charging into the guy's office and was like, why did we do this? And the guy was like, well, because you said so. And Steve said, I was wrong and it was your job to convince me that I was wrong. So that's a great example of loud listening. Next time the guy didn't back down so quickly. And so you've got to understand what your style is and how that's going to work with the people around you. Now, Steve was able to adjust his style, and Tim was able to adjust his style. So it's not like loud listeners have to only hire loud listeners. Steve Jobs and Tim Cook obviously worked very well together. But you've got to be aware of what your style is of listening. I'm more of a loud listener than a quiet listener. And often I found that people tried to insist that I become a quiet listener. And I couldn't. That wasn't going to work for me. So you got to figure out the way you're going to listen. I think one of your best opportunities to really listen to each person who works directly for you is your one-on-one. So make sure in your one-on-one meetings that your employee sets the agenda. You don't set the agenda. At best, the only part of the agenda you might be able to impact a little bit is asking your employee to give you feedback, soliciting feedback in that meeting. But do that at the very end. It's the direct reports agenda in a one-on-one. Don't use your one-on-one time to give feedback, because if you're in giving feedback mode, you're not as much in, you should be in listening mode, but you're usually not. So make sure that you use that one-on-one time to listen to each person who reports directly to you, and to help them clarify and nurture new ideas.